All right, people, you know that sound that is the Unfiltered band. It means another episode of Unfiltered comes your way here and now. Officially, this will go down as episode 116 of Unfiltered. It's an October Unfiltered live on a Monday, a Halloween Monday, as we get set for Game 3 of the World Series as it shifts back to the city of brotherly love as the Philadelphia Phillies and Noah Syndergaard host Lance McCullers and the Houston Astros with the series even at 1. You are in an even better spot because you're with us. You can get on board the Unfiltered Revolution at Casey Stern anytime. Hop in the bio, and you'll see my YouTube channel where you can catch us live as we are right now at noon Eastern time on a daily basis throughout the conclusion of the 2022 baseball season in this World Series, as well as Believe's YouTube. That's BLEAV. And, of course, live on Twitter. And you can chat all three of those ways along the way, and I'll get your thoughts on board as we go on for it'll be about the next 90 minutes here. And thank you, Unfiltered Band. And welcome back to another episode of October Unfiltered. Busy show today. Mark Feinsand going to join me in a few minutes. MLB.com, MLB Network. Billy King, a friend, former teammate over at Turner, and a guy who knows a thing or two about running teams in Philadelphia, does he not? And now just a diehard Philly fan rooting for this club. Get a chance to have Billy on. Looking forward to that. And my guy Jim Duquette back on board the show in about an hour or so to give us the GM's perspective, looking down on the field of what's transpired in the first two games of the series and what to expect as we go forward here, beginning in Game 3 with this next group here in Philadelphia. As always, we are happy to be presented by the group over at BetOnline. Basketball's back. BetOnline remains your number one source of your sports betting needs this season. Latest odds, team matchup info, player news, and game trends over at BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information. BetOnline's got live betting, free contests, and giveaways all season long. It's always the fastest and easiest way to bet your favorite sports and events, whether NFL, NBA, NHL, MMA, tennis, boxing, even golf. It's simple. Get over to betonline.ag. That's betonline.ag. You can join and get your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure to use this promo code. It's BELIEVE, BLEAV, to receive your rewards. It's BetOnline, where the game starts as we get started here, previewing, getting you set for Game 3. Again, Billy King, Jim Duquette still to come, and in the leadoff spot, if you will, because he is spry and knows how to work a count, my guy, Mark Feinsand. Hello, sir. And you must be proud wearing those colors I expected today after Mr. Heineke yesterday. How are you?
Hottest team in the NFL this side of Philadelphia, right?
Yeah, it's funny. The Giants and Jets crashed down to earth, but it is it's amazing what happens when you have belief. And that guy sitting there wearing number 4 in the QB spot for your team certainly has that. It's something the Phillies have had the whole way through. I'm sure you're not surprised to see that this has the potential to be a long series. As you look before this series began, how did you try and kind of manage the dichotomy, Mark, between the momentum of the Phillies and all those common sense sort of things that tell you that the Astros are just a better baseball team?
Well, I think we may have talked about this last time. I just thought when you go into a series, a short series, best of 7, with Nola and Wheeler pitching 4, possibly 5 games in that series, and you have a lineup the way Philly has, Houston should be favored in this series, and they were. But to think that Philly couldn't hang with Houston, given those 2 starting pitchers, that lineup, and a vastly improved bullpen that has pitched pretty well in the playoffs, and I loved Rob Thompson going to Ranger Suarez in Game 1. It was one of those like, hey, we just battled back from 5-0. We're not just going to give this up, and this is the guy to face, Alvarez and Tucker here. I loved that. It was sort of, you don't think about what's coming down the road, Game 3, Game 4. You got to win Game 1. And Rob Thompson went ahead and did what it had to do to get that done.
And the irony is, and I said this, Mark, before that game, part of that was knowing he's got Wheeler in that Game 2 spot. And I said, look, I know Wheeler's the ace of this team, and with Joe Torre all those years that Andy Pettit pitched Game 2, Pettit maybe wasn't the ace, but he always was the ace in the postseason. There was just a different feel knowing he was pitching Game 2, and Rob Thompson clearly aggressive, knowing or thinking at least at the time, right, that Wheeler would go deep into the game. He exhausts his bullpen. He's able to get a win, and the Astros battle back in Game 2. I know you've watched the ascension like we all have of Framber Valdez. What's impressed you most about watching what he's been able to do this postseason comparatively with the emotions specifically, Mark, than what happened a year ago where he doesn't get out of the third inning either time?
Well, I think, you learn from those experiences. And so when you go through those shortened starts and you can look back and figure out what you weren't doing right, he just seems very calm out there. He just seems like a guy who knows his place, knows how good his year was. He'd be in the Cy Young mix if not for the 39-year-old pitching next to him. And I think Valdez just knows that, you know what? He's not a national name. He's not a household name yet. Hitters know who he is, and they know what they're in for when they go up there against him. And he's just gone out there and done his job. He's one of the best young pitchers in the game. And I think, when you go through those struggles in the postseason, you have to learn from them, or else you're not going to get better. And he's clearly learned from them.
I've asked a bunch of people this question, including people who are in the game and play it. Forget about being, covering it as long as we have, and you a little longer than I have. But Mike Stanton being among them, who have asked, "Did you ever hear of this rule with Maldonado and Pujols with the bat?" Because it's amazing how this deep into watching the game, I'd never heard of the grandfathered in clause of I could use a bat, you can't. Did you even know that was a thing before this story broke?
I forgot. I remember when they changed the specifications of what bats could be used. Because if you remember, there were, about 10, 12 years ago at this point, there were a lot of instances of bats that were just getting broken a lot and flying back at pitchers. And there were some injuries. And, they tried to make the game safer for the pitchers and the guys who were standing essentially 57 feet away after they released the ball. So I remember when they put some different specifications in. I don't know that I ever realized that players have been grandfathered in to be using, the old bats or not. But of course, when everybody hears about this, they're like, "Oh, here we go! The Astros are cheating again.
Right,
They're cheaters.
right, of course,
cheaters."
right.
There was no advantage to this. This was just a safety issue. Clearly, Maldonado had no idea. It wasn't like he's been using them all year. And Albert Pujols apparently was one of the guys grandfathered into this. I would imagine that there aren't very many left at this point, but this was a big old non-story to me.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. The reason and it's kind of a prelude to another question. A lot of people have asked and fans have asked, do you think that things have kind of blown over with what happened in 2017? And the way I've looked at it is, with this team specifically in 2022, maybe for some, I think it depends if you root for or played for the teams who played them, right, and were against them in 2017. But to see the Valdez conversation about the sticky stuff and he's not cheating, and to see the Maldonado bat. How much are these signs that, you know what, everybody outside of Houston still looking at the Astros, Mark, especially with guys like Altuve and Bregman still on the team, as those Astros with the garbage cans?
Well, I think that's it. Is that there's only, I think, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 5 players left on the roster from 2017, but that includes Jose Altuve and Alex Bregman and Yuli Gurriel and Verlander. Not that Verlander was benefiting from the trash cans, but I think when you have 3 of the 9 guys in the starting lineup, including 2 of the biggest stars on the team, you're not going to detach yourself from that team so fast. And New York and Los Angeles are never going to stop thinking about it. They're never going to stop thinking that without those sign stealing issues, they would have won the World Series that year. Look, people don't like the Astros for the most part outside of Houston. Living in the New York, New Jersey area and having plenty of people in my life who detest Philadelphia teams, they're rooting for the Phillies.
Yeah, that's right. Isn't it amazing?
It's amazing. Root for the Astros. They're sort of.
It is amazing. It's amazing.
This is like for a Yankee fan back in '86, Mets, Red Sox. It's like
that's right.
I just hope the whole thing just craters into the ocean or something because I don't want to root for either of these teams. That's where people are now. Nobody wants to root for the Astros unless you are an Astros fan. And that's not going to go away anytime soon.
Yeah, it is dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. I mean, really, you Met fans that I know, Padre fans. I mean, teams you would never think. They just lost this team. Now, anybody but outside of Dusty Baker. It's always what you hear. Yeah, if Dusty wins, I'm okay with that, but I don't want the team to win, right? Which, of course, those things can't work. We talked the last time I had you on about getting to see Rob Thompson's story, and I wrote this down when I knew you were coming on because I wanted to ask you about this from game one. To see David Robertson, a guy that you covered for so long, have the story that he had. And I think people, when they hear the story, think about, okay, well, the celebration, which was, unfortunate. But I'm talking about you're kind of out of the league, out of sight, out of mind. You have to resurface as even a guy, let alone a guy who at the trade deadline was a highly sought after back end reliever, to then be in a spot where you're striking it out Alvarez, right? And you're finding your way through that inning. How good did you feel from him, knowing him, that he's been able to kind of put this story together at this one of these final chapters of his career?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little biased here. I've known Dave since he was in the minor leagues, and He's always been one of my favorite guys in the game. So I was very happy to see him come up with that. When he hit Diaz with that pitch, and before the umpire had even signaled, no, you're not hit by the pitch, you could see Dave was about to go after him with the plate. Like, whoa, 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 whoa. So I was stunned to see the call overturned like that, to see them hold up the not
Which
hit
is
by
great.
pitch,
Which is great.
which is great because he absolutely dips into
Yeah,
that.
oh,
And
it's terrible.
if
Yes.
you've heard that
The Spanish
hotline
audio that they
audio,
caught, yeah, it's fantastic.
fantastic.
It's fantastic.
But no, look, Robertson was a guy who signed with Philly, injury problems, and you wondered if he was ever going to get that chance again. He made 7 appearances with the Phillies during his first 2 years there. Obviously didn't come back for the third. The option wasn't picked up, and he was wondering if he was going to pitch again. He ended up pitching for Team USA. Pitched well there enough to get a little brief stint with the Rays, where he pitched really well. Came back, signed with the Cubs this year, and I think the idea was, here's the thing. Here's what's crazy about baseball. Any team could have had David Robertson in March or April or whatever the lockout ended, and everybody started signing. He signed for like $2.5-3 million with the Cubs. Any team could have had him. The Cubs signed him, used him, turned him into a nice trade piece coming July, early August, and the Phillies said, you know what? Rob Thompson knows him. Kevin Long knows him. He knows Philly. He's been there. It's been a great story. And, he's not going in there to be the closer, but he's a piece of that bullpen that with Alvarado and Dominguez and Eflin, they've really put together something there. And to me, that group is the one that's going to make or break it for Philly, because I think the lineups are pretty close. The top of the rotation is close. The middle, the 3-4 is not necessarily, but Phillies have enough offense to make McCullers and Javier work. So to me, the bullpen being able to hold a lead once they get one, assuming they do, that's going to be what makes or breaks this for Philly.
Yeah, I'm with you, and Mark Feinsand joining us. And I think there's a lot of pressure on them to be nearly flawless during this series, which is not easy. But I agree with you, and I want to go back to Suarez for a second. I'm not in the conversations, whether it be with Hill, the pitching coach, or with Rob Thompson, or knowing exactly, how much, that throw, right, which is not a side. You're getting, amped up. You strike out Alvarez, to all of that. I don't know how much that affects him, but I was surprised to not see him in Game 3. Because going back to a point you made, when Rob Thompson was interviewed down in the field during that game, he said, I'm feeling we just tied this game. I'm not letting that go away. You're now 1-1 and you're in Philly. And the momentum with the second you get out on that field going to be so much in your favor. And Syndergaard is kind of an unknown. You really don't know how deep you can go, what you're going to get out of him. Maybe he goes 4 innings and it's great. Maybe he goes 4 hitters and it's a nightmare. Are you surprised that even if Suarez was shortened a bit, Mark, that he's not the starter in Game 3?
Well, Thompson said yesterday when he was asked about that by using him Game 4, they'll probably get 20 to 25 more pitches out of him. That's significant. That's at least an inning, maybe 2. So I think, given how Houston's lineup can work counts and really make a pitcher work, if you're going into a game where you're thinking he's going to only be able to throw 75 pitches, that could be 3 innings. So I wasn't surprised. Certainly once you heard that, you're like, all right, well, if the extra day is that meaningful to him physically to get him back up to 100 pitches or so, you were going to throw a bullpen game in one of these 2 games, right? Either Suarez is going to pitch Game 3 and Syndergaard and company were going to pitch Game 4, or vice versa. I think this actually, in some weird way, puts more pressure on Houston to win Game 3, because this is the winnable game, like the really winnable game. Not that they're not all winnable. This is the one Houston should win. You're getting Syndergaard, unknown quantity, followed by a bunch of other guys. Now this crowd's going to be crazy tonight. It's Halloween. I'm going down to Philly for this game. I'm a little scared. I can't lie. I've been out of.
Well, you're not going to be in
game.
Commanders gear or old Redskins gear, so you'll be fine. You'll be all right.
I'm not even going to be in Commanders colors. I've been in that ballpark on Halloween for the World Series, and it's quite the scene. They're bringing out all these different Philly former champions, Dr. J, Mike Schmidt, Brandon Graham, Bernie Parent, a couple other guys. It's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. But I think this is the game. If the crowd can help will that lineup, or rattle McCullers and get them some runs, this is a game. If Philly steals this game, I really like their chances in this series. If Houston wins this game, I still like Philly's chances in Game 4 to even the series up. But to me, the fact that Syndergaard's going and you sort of don't know what you're going to get, I think this makes this a really, really important game for Houston.
Yeah, and I'm really curious to see how Rob Thompson manages with Syndergaard and where he goes next because, I think they'll hit McCullers, I think, enough, especially in that park. I mean, look, the Phillies a tough team to think. Lance may pitch 5-6 innings and give up 3 runs, which would be great. I don't think he's going to shut them out. So there's a chance you still be in the game, but where do you go, right? Because now you don't have the Suarez piece coming out. He's starting tomorrow. And Rob Thompson has that whole managing of in the now and in the moment. How much do you expect him to ride Alvarado and to ride Dominguez, especially early, if he's in a 4th, 5th inning where it's close? To your point, thinking now I've allowed Suarez to play a little bit longer tomorrow, and if I got a chance to take the momentum with Suarez on the back end, is this going to be similar to Game 3 of last week, right, in the LCS, in the way that Rob Thompson manages this game if it's close in the middle innings, Mark?
It could be, you're facing a situation where you're going to have 3 games in a row, and you have to make sure you have your bullpen available for all 3. But at the same time, you can steal this game. You steal it, and you hope for the best in Game 4. Winning this game would be sort of a bonus for Philly, I think. But, these are the decisions that people get paid much more than we do to ultimately make. And they're going to be judged on the win or the loss, not the decision. If the decision works, it's a great decision. If the decision doesn't work and backfires, you're an idiot. Unfortunately, this is the life of a manager. But I would imagine he would try to be aggressive and try to, if you're in position to win this game, if they're down by 2 runs, I don't think he's going to exhaust his big arms at the back of the bullpen. If they're up by 2 runs, you can bet he's going to do anything he can to try to hold that lead.
Yeah, he's had a great feel for sure. Let me get 2 quick ones, and then I'll let you run. And I appreciate this, and safe travels to Philly and in Philly, where I think you'll be fine as long as you don't wear that shirt. And just start getting on any Eagle fans because they're pretty rowdy right now. If you haven't noticed, undefeated. Were you surprised that Bryson Stott didn't get the start? I know it's the lefty, but I'm watching his at-bats, Mark, and he has really, over the year, you could see him growing. Had that 10-pitch AB against Verlander in Game 1, which he made out, but it was in the midst of them working Verlander. He comes cold off the bench in the game where Sosa played for him, and Hoskins should have had that grab. It's not about Sosa's throw. I'm sorry. He got to make that play. But are you surprised against the lefty, see Stott sit? Has he, in your mind, put himself in a position where maybe if that happens again later in the series, they see Valdez, where you just ride Stott the rest of the way? Because I'm watching his ABs. He looks as comfortable as anybody right now at the plate.
Yeah, a little bit surprised, but at the same time, I think this is one thing that the teams and managers in particular do that I like, which is this is what we've been doing all year, and this is what helped us get where we are. We're not going to change our approach or change what we do because it's a World Series. I mean, obviously, if a guy's red hot, sure, maybe you make
Steven Pierce, right? 2018, starting him against righties, for example.
Right. So there are exceptions, but generally speaking, I think managers try to keep these games feeling as normal as they can for their team. And if you come in and these guys are platooning against this guy and that guy, and that's how we've been doing it for 4 months as we've been on this big roll, and that's what we've done throughout the whole playoffs, then you're going to keep doing it. And obviously you have the other guy on the bench to use in the spot where appropriate. So, yeah, I like to see the hot hand get put in the lineup, but at the same time, these guys know their teams. They know what their what their capabilities are, and they know what got them where they are.
Last thing for me, you've covered a lot of World Series and teams, and it's hard to kind of quantify because you have to look at them all, but defensively, and Castellanos made a brilliant play, but he is not a brilliant outfielder, we know. Vierling, who came in for defense, gets caught flat-footed. Alvarez takes third base, right? Bohm's made a couple of dynamic plays. He's gotten better over the years, but still a little bit dicey. Hoskins at first is kind of a mess defensively. Let's be fair. You got Schwarber. You're trying to rush to get out of there in left field. Is this as questionable defensive group outside of Real Muto as any World Series team you've covered? It isn't amazing in some ways that with all the defensive issues and holes they seem to have, that they are able to get as far as they are now. 1-1 in Game 3 of the World Series.
I haven't seen much of them play this year. Nick Castellanos looks like the best right fielder in the game to me. I don't know. That play was incredible, and the fact that he comes up with that play,
it's amazing.
And I feel like didn't he have one other really big?
He did 2 weeks ago. He did. He did in the Atlanta series. He had another play. Yes.
Look, you don't have to be a great fielder to come up with a gem once in a while, right? I've seen some pretty bad fielders come up with really good plays at the right time, which sometimes that's what happens when a team goes on a run in the playoffs like this. Yeah, this is not a very good defensive team. And all year, we've been saying that. This has not been a fundamentally sound team. When Joe Girardi got fired, that was one of the big criticisms was they don't catch the ball. They don't run the bases well. They can slug, and they got a couple pitchers, and that's it. But they're coming up with the plays when they need to, and that's that's what you need to do to win a World Series. And right now, they're 3 wins away from doing that.
Safe travels while you're driving. Just to think about something fun. Think about being down 3-0 to the defending champion Avalanche and coming back and winning after beating the Rangers and scoring 6 goals in Carolina. Just to say, we're on a roll. See, at least let's take it 3 in a row as Islander fans. Enjoy that and safe travels.
Things are getting nice, and I got Kirk Cousins coming back to DC next weekend.
Hey, as long as you don't have Carson Wentz coming back to DC, you'll be fine.
I don't ever want to see Carson Wentz in DC again. Taylor Heineke, baby. We love him.
I appreciate you, buddy. Thank you for doing this.
You got it.
All right, there he is, Mark Feinsand, as good as there is in the business and the even better person. We appreciate him for hopping on board. Billy King going to join us, of course, a long-time running the Sixers in Philadelphia. Now the diehard Philly fan and a friend of mine and one of the good dudes in sports and smart people will join me here in a few minutes. We'll talk some Phillies. Jim Duquette will be here at the top of the hour. You could jump in on the stream. There's 3 ways to do this if you want to chat. You could hop open on Twitter and pop open the box and get in the chat with me, and I can bring your stuff up live. You can do it in the YouTube as well, whether you're on my YouTube channel or Believes. And of course, not discounting all the folks listening or watching Apple, Spotify, everywhere you get your podcast belated here on October Unfiltered. Want to hit a couple of things that Mark said before Billy gets in here. I'm with him, and I've talked about this. I'm with Feinsand on the idea that you don't want to make it, and Ned Yost said this 2 days ago. Look, you don't want to make it feel different because you're in a World Series, because you want the players to feel like, hey, it's just another day. Embrace that it's a big game and a fun game, but you're not trying to be somebody you're not. You're not trying to do things that you didn't do to get here. There's a reason you're in this spot, and I buy into all of those things, right? And I also think that the way you manage, in some respects, you have to do it in the World Series and in the postseason the way you have the whole time. However, I watched, speaking of Ned Yost, him get in a spot where he literally was in a press. He'd be the first to tell you this. Press conference, the first run that they made of the 2, and again, without Mad Bum, they win 2 championships. The first run they made, he in a press conference getting killed afterwards in Kansas City late in the season because he's saying that Kelvin Herrera, that's my 6th inning guy. So that's why I didn't go to him. Because it wasn't, or that's my 7th inning guy, and it was the 6th inning. Like, so regimented the way a lot of managers used to be. Some still are, right? They don't succeed because of it. But he was that way. Then he's in the Madison Bumgarner game, and they got Jeremy Guthrie, Jay Guts, terrific dude, and Tim Hudson on the hill, and they're in like the 3rd, 4th inning, and here's Herrera in the 4th inning trying to get it. It was the right move because you got to adjust. Here's Alex Cora, who, like Steve Pearce, he don't hit righties. And Devers don't play against lefties. But in the middle of that series against the Dodgers, here's Devers against the lefty and Pierce against the righty. And all of a sudden, there you go. Price doesn't pitch out of the bullpen. Here he's in the bullpen. Certainly not going to start 2 days later. You got to do all of those things. And I know they didn't win the 17-inning game the way he rolled Evaldi in that game. You have got to, if you are going to manage and be successful in a World Series, I do agree with Mark that there is a large part that has to be about, here is what we have done to get to this point. Here is who we've been, and we are going to stick to that because we know what's successful. We're not going to panic, because panic is, I love Booney. I don't think going to Bader in the leadoff spot because of the way he hit well, and 5 home runs in the postseason, was hitting the ball. But I think you go change the lineup 3 times in the 3 days after that, and then all of a sudden you're looking like you're panicking to me. Now you're trying too much, and now the players can feel you don't know the feel. You're not sure who's in the right spot. You're not sure what it's supposed to look like. And if I think that you're not sure, how the hell am I going to trust you as a manager? You're the one who's supposed to calm me down and get my heart rate and my pulse back to where it's supposed to be to go succeed, to slow the game down, as they say. But I think in a spot like this, we've seen Rob Thompson go the other way so much. I mean, look, he'd never in a regular season go there. You could tell me all you want about how this is what we do. You're not putting Suarez in that spot normally, not going to Alvarado that early normally. Dominguez in Game 3 last week. You're not doing that early in a regular season. You got to do some things different. For me, for Philadelphia, kind of is what it is defensively. Lefty, righty. Look, we're talking about 7, 8 in the lineup anyway. In terms of Stott and Marsh, those guys, they're in there for me. Vierling not going to play. I'm not putting him in that spot. It's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. I think when you look at the scenario that you have with the Philadelphia Phillies, they have been so good and riding so much momentum that it's carried them to this point in large part. But at the same time, now they're going to have to be better within margins that they're normally not great in. They're going to have to make the defensive plays to the point of what Mark said. And Nick Castellanos not going to be a great fielder. He got to make that play. I mean, he made a sparkling grab in the 9th inning. Outside of JT Realmuto, you don't know what you're getting in most of the spots defensively, but you got to find better defense. You guys going to have to step up. They're going to have to be better because you cannot give the Astros additional opportunities constantly. You just can't do it. Astros going to kill you. Saw it in the Yankees series with Garrett Cole with the pop-up between Bader and Judge, and all of a sudden here's Chas McCormick, and boom, gone, home run, and Cole down 2-0. You can't give extra opportunity. You can't turn the ball over against the Golden State Warriors. You can't make errors or bad defensive plays that might not officially be errors to give extra chances and extra opportunities to teams like the Houston Astros. You just can't do it. Can't. So they're going to have to play good. And look, the margin of error going to be way smaller with Noah Syndergaard because we got no idea what Noah Syndergaard's going to do. That's the fascinating part of Game 3. I mean, nobody's going to be surprised if ... Noah Syndergaard pitches 3 2/3 innings, gives up a run, is up 4-1, and is off to a standing ovation. They go to the bullpen in the 4th, and they try and hold it down, figure it out. No one's going to be surprised if Noah Syndergaard 4 batters into the game, down 3-0, and they're already warming somebody up in the bullpen, and he's faltering like Mr. Falter did, who's not on the roster a week ago in Game 4. Nobody's going to be surprised if Noah Syndergaard's sitting there and pitching great through 3 innings, and you're like, holy crap, look what's happening, and then you don't get the bullpen up fast enough, and now you blew a 3-0 lead. You have no idea what you're getting at all. That's what makes this game tonight so interesting and so crazy. Now, to be fair, going into Game 2, we thought we all knew what Zach Wheeler was going to do, and 4 pitches in, you got 2 runs and 3 doubles, and what the hell just happened? Baseball, not, you know, you can put it on a script all you want, right? In the NFL, you can go script the first 15 plays. You got no idea what's going to happen when all of a sudden the snap is fumbled, and you know you're on your own 18 playing defense instead. Like you got no idea. So in a spot like this, so much is riding on. Can Syndergaard keep this offense with that crowd in the game long enough? Because Lance McCullers is a guy who's going to keep you in a game. He's a competitive, gutsy guy. He's going to give you a chance to win. But the chances are he's not going to dominate you. The chances are he's going to give you some leeway. Especially the thing to watch with McCullers, and I've seen him for years. Anybody who watches Lance McCullers, his fastball command is a problem. You know, one of the reasons he goes to those other 3 pitches so often, especially that curveball, is because they're way more effective than that fastball. He's not throwing it that hard. It's hard for him to spot. He's not sitting there 4 quadrants and dotting I's and crossing T's with it. That's not what that is. He is finding a way to sneak it and shoot it by you when you're expecting a curveball so he can get it on the inner part of the plate and get you for a strike or get you to swing and miss because you're over anxious if it's up in the zone because it looks so hittable. And he's trying to get ahead in some counts with it when he sees that you're patient or thinks you're going to be in an at-bat, because then he can go ahead and flip that curveball on you in the dirt and get a swing and a miss, much like Valdez was doing to this team all night in Game 2. That's the approach. But McCullers is a guy whose fastball command, sometimes against the Yankees, go back a week ago, he didn't find it for like 3 innings and then pitched very well and kept them in a game. And if you saw the way he started the game, you would have thought, well, there's no way this is going to continue. He could walk guys. He could be wild. He's going to give the Phillies a chance to be in this game. I mean, Javier right now, ironically, look, I get it. You know, starting Game 4, I know what McCullers has been, and it's a great story, too, to get him back healthy. Pitch the 8 starts at the back end of the year. Then you get the celebration snafu, one of 2, Robertson on the other side, right? Where he goes and he's got to start Game 4 last week. But Javier, a guy who nearly no-hit the Yankees at the end of the season and was terrific against them in Game 3 a week ago. You're going to get better starts from both of the starters in Game 4 of this series than you're going to get in Game 3. Where I think there's a very good chance we're sitting here now. always ends up the opposite. But I think the way it looks, at least on paper, that being what it is, you could be sitting there 5-5 and a fifth. And the Phillies are not supposed to win those kind of games against the Astros because the Astros are so deep. But they've been able to do that, which has been so impressive because Philadelphia is not just every time about the momentum that they've ridden, but the Philadelphia Phillies are riding a bullpen that's just been dynamic and deep and has done everything you could ever ask for them and been brilliant. And I know Philly fans are going to be crazy, and it's Halloween, so it's ramped up to some kind of freakish level. So let's get a chance to find out about the pulse in that city of brotherly love. As one of my favorite people and smartest people in sports, knows a thing or two about running teams in Philadelphia. And now just a diehard fan, and by the way, a fan of baseball, because I want to get to talking about your boy as we welcome in Billy King. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Casey. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. So first of all, for the people who are not in Philly, they live on the West Coast, they're watching these crowds. These are no surprises to you, clearly. But can you try and explain for a guy who because like I think about like in college terms, right? Duke, just a different animal. Like you've seen it in all sorts of levels. But what about Philly is just different than everywhere else you've been in terms of sports towns?
Well, I mean, it's a sports town, and it's a sports town for every sport. They're celebrating last night because the Union, our soccer team, is going to the finals. And so, they're celebrating that. Then you've got the Eagles who are 7-0. And then you've got the, Phillies, obviously, in the World Series. When I used to be a GM here, I always said, as a basketball team, we had to make sure we were playing our best when football ended, because that's when the focus is going to come to you. Everyone here, they weren't sure about the Phillies because they lost some games at the end. But once they made it and then they beat St. Louis, everybody jumped on, and they're passionate about it. That's all everybody's talking about. You'd be amazed. We have a football team that's undefeated, the only undefeated in the NFL, and they can't get coverage because everybody's talking about the Phillies. And to me, I've never been part of a city. You said I went to Duke and it was great, but for a city that lives and dies with their teams winning and losing. Every loss hurts, whether it's regular season or playoffs, and every win, it's like you won the Super Bowl. That's how passionate they are about it here. And that's why people say it's Philly, they're tough. No, they're tough. They just want to win. I think the fans here hate losing more than they hate winning. I mean, more than they love winning. That probably put it in perspective.
I noticed, by the way, you mentioned, and look, as a Giant fan, you're going to tell me about the Eagles, but you didn't mention the Sixers there. But we'll leave that alone for now.
Well, and the reason, the reason I did that is because of the fact that they're not on the radar right now because they're just starting and,
it might be
they're
good
not
news.
Playing that well. Yeah,
that might be good news.
That well. Yeah.
That might be good news. I want to ask you about Bryce specifically because I've always said this about and AI, one of my favorite players as a fan to watch it in any sport. He had, there were the acorns that were like, way bigger than his height. Like he wasn't afraid. You can't be afraid to play in Philadelphia. How much does Bryce remind you of all the guys who you've seen have succeeded in this city? And how much is that a huge part of it to have Billy as different kind of a fortitude? And I'm not trying to get on Ben Simmons specifically, but there is a category of you can't show weakness, right? If you're playing in Philadelphia.
Well, the main thing is they just want you to give everything you had. I mean, they want you to go out and compete and play as hard like Bryce. He's trying to steal bases. He's diving for loose balls. He embraced it from day one when he got here. He embraced the mascot, the fanatic. He embraced the city. He embraced the Eagles. And that's what they want. They want you to be one of them. They want to be able to see you at Wawa getting coffee or getting a hoagie. They want to see you.
They want you to be local, right? They want you to be local.
Yeah, and they know in the offseason you may not live here, but when you're here, they want you to be a part of it. And when you're not here and you're talking about it, they want you to talk passionate about them. And that's something that Allen did. I mean, they would see the Bentley at Taco Bell, the drive-in, or at Fridays. So he was one of them. Brian Dawkins, Jason Kelsey does the Mummers Parade. If you embrace the city, they will embrace you. If they feel like you're not embracing the city and you're just here to play, then they're not going to embrace you.
Guys like Reese Hoskins, I assume you got to have a lot of respect. I've been saying this from the outside. It's like, we know he's not a good defensive first baseman. Had a play he should have made in the last game. He's been crushed by the fans. He can't turn on WIP, I'm sure. And I know hosts there who tell me that without people calling for months about he's a DH or he shouldn't play or, because the expectations, he had a home run like almost every at-bat, Billy, when he first came up. But how much do you admire having players were there players on your Sixers teams that you kind of watched them earn and gain the respect because of the toughness they had, maybe getting booed, kind of getting ridden a little bit by the city and fighting through that and coming out the other side? How much different is the feel for that city with players who are tough enough to handle it, Billy, and then come throughout the other side like Hoskins has?
Well, and that's the big thing is they want you to embrace it. If you make a mistake, don't try to hide and come up with an excuse. Own it. And Alec Baum, for example, early in the year, he had 3 errors in one game, and they caught him, saying something about the fans, and he owned it. And then he went out and worked at it and played, and now they love him. If he would have said, "I didn't say that, what are you talking about?" then the city would have turned on him. But you have to own, if you make a mistake, own it and say, "I got to play better," and then they'll love you.
Does that make just to kind of go off your track just a little bit, because I want to go back here, but is the Ben Simmons story in Philly a sad story? Like when you look back at it, is it an unfortunate story? Like, how do you try and put your finger on a guy who had so much talent, but it seemed like, because here's the thing, and you tell me if I'm wrong, from the outside, people look at the shot with Steph where he doesn't dunk, right, where he passes it, or with Trae Young on him where he doesn't dunk. They look at not shooting. I look at Philly fans notice that they got to him, and he seemed to wear that all the time. Is it a sad story what happened with Ben in Philadelphia? How do you kind of look back at that?
It is, because when I was at the gym, I spent a lot of time talking to the guys about, I had a player, and I won't say his name, but, it was during the 2001 era, and he was hurt. It wasn't going to play. And I went up to him and said, "Look, if you're not playing, you can't be out partying because the city will turn on you. If you're hurt, you can't go out and party." And he didn't understand it, and he did, and they turned on him. And, he ended up not being here long, and he left. And that's what I would talk to guys about, like certain things you've got to say or do, because the city will turn. With Ben, I think after that play with Trae Young, if he just said, "You're right, I should have dunked it, and I thought somebody was open, but at that point of the game, I got to go up and stronger," or say, "Look, I'm gonna work this summer. I got to get better at my free throws, in order for us to go where I've got to get better at it," they would have embraced him. But when you sort of take the attitude like, I didn't do anything wrong, why are you guys criticizing me? That's when they start saying, "Well, obviously, we know that you did something wrong." Once you own it, and I think if Ben would have owned it and said, "They're right. That play, I had to make it. I got to dunk." And he didn't. And I think he probably was afraid, if I own it, how were they going to react? I think they would have reacted great and said, "Yep." And there would have been some that would have still put on him, but I think they would have reacted, better than the way he handled it.
And they're okay, because here's the thing: they're great with humanity. They're great with vulnerability. They're just not great with. You got to be real. The sincerity of Philadelphia, right? It's the one city for me. Right or wrong or indifferent, they're sincere. This is some real, authentic people that you're going to find on Halloween tonight. Speaking of which, that crowd. How much of a motivator and difference maker is it for teams in Philadelphia when you watch your Cubs go take the floor in Philly at home and you see the environment? I know you've been at Citizens Bank Park in these games. Just how much can the players ride from that, Billy? Because, we've seen teams lose on the road. Look, in 2019, the Nationals won 4 games on the road. It's possible to win on the road. We get that. You're not going to think you can't win in Philly. But how much of a difference maker and advantage is it specifically for that crowd tonight for those teams in Philly?
Well, I think it lifts the Phillies players, the home team, for sure. I think when they know they go up to bat, they've got 45,000 people, 46,000 behind them cheering for them. When they make a play, they know that they're cheering. And then for the opposing team, they're on them. They're on them when they go to the dugout. If you go to right field, left field, they're on you from the field to first base. They're going to be on you the whole game, win or lose. They're not going to let up. And I think it does affect you, because if you're playing left field and you got to go out there every inning, and that same guy's going to be yelling at you every inning. It can wear on you. It's not like in football where you go down the field and you don't but even in football when you go to your sideline, they're yelling at you. But when you're in left field, you're out there by yourself. There's no teammates to cover for you. Or if you're in right field or you're in center, they're going to yell at you, and you walk out there. You see that one guy. Perfect example. When they opened the ballpark, I had season tickets for the first 10 years. The dugout you'll see is in the outfield, and there's a 2-tier dugout. When they first Phillies dugout was at the top, and the visitors was below, and so it was closest to the fans. The Phillies bullpen said, no, we got to switch that, and they did. They put the visitors up top and the Phillies down low. Because if you're in the bullpen, even if you're a Philly fan, you're not pitching well, you're going to hear from them the whole, and so now the visiting bullpens, they hear it all nonstop while they're out there. So I think it's a huge impact, a huge advantage and I'm going to be there tonight, and I just know that I was listening to a guy this morning on the radio saying he's got a trash can as his Halloween costume.
Oh, you know that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Billy, you know they're going to be clanging those trash cans. They're going to be bringing those signs. Philly fans are relentless. I know a guy who knows Philly as well as anybody. Of course, longtime team president and GM with the Sixers. Go ahead, Billy.
One quick story I want to tell you during the COVID,
go ahead, please.
Because they wouldn't let people in the building. So there was a group of fans, when they were playing games with no fans, they would go to the center field where you could see through the fence, and they were out there making noise. It was like 30 or 40 or 50 every game would stand outside and cheer. And the visiting team, they started complaining about them because they were making so much noise. But they were outside the ballpark. They were bringing horns and everything. And I think they call it the Fandemic crew. And they went down there every game during COVID. Even though they couldn't get in, they went every game.
I love that. I've said this before. I've covered baseball 20 years. I remember being in Arizona in 2007, not trying to get on a specific city, but here's game one of an NLCS, and with 2 outs and 2 strikes in the first inning, Brandon Webb, who was a Cy Young candidate on the Hill, they had to put on the big board to stand. I've seen some places where they don't get it. The Philly fans, they stood the whole game, Billy. I never seen anything like that last week. I'm telling you, because look, New York's a great crowd. It's not like that. I mean, Philly fans, you would think they never been here before. It's pretty amazing. I want to hit you with 2 more. One, I didn't know this when I went to look at your Twitter. I didn't know your son was playing baseball. I love so for Billy, you can get over and get at his Twitter at BK Defend. You've got a play from your son Reggie with a throw from center field. And I love this. Can you take me through? So he's playing college. Talk to me about your boy. How proud of you got to be.
That was high school. I mean, not high
school.
It was 8th grade. He's just a freshman this year, so that was this.
Oh
summer.
My goodness. Okay.
Yeah, he plays for a travel team. They happened to be playing down at North Carolina. That game was at Duke, actually.
Okay. So they're playing at Duke, where
and he plays center field. He's got a pretty good arm, and so and it's funny early in the game season. If somebody will try to run early in the first inning, the best play is to throw it to second, but his coach will say, throw it home so they know the arm so they don't try to run on them. But this game, late in the game, the guy was trying to, score from second. And as you saw, it one hop right to the catcher.
Tagged
him out. Yeah.
I mean, come on now. You're not kidding. Now, the question is, with Brandon Marsh's hair, at center field, I don't know. Is that like who's the center? Does he have a center fielder? Because first of all, I love the attitude of the Philadelphia Phillies. Their defense, like defensive center field, is not necessarily their thing. Does he have a guy that's like his guy that he watches in the league, or like that he's been, because for people like you and I, we've got obviously the juniors and the Torrey Hunters and many others. Obviously, Andrew Jones, who's his guy in the outfield?
Well, I mean, growing up, he was a big fan of Jimmy Rollins, who was here. He was a shortstop because he wanted to play in the infield. But I don't think he's really just locked into just the outfield. I think he likes the game of baseball. He's been playing it and loves the strategy of it. Knows the rotations or who's coming in. So he's just a big fan of baseball. I mean, I think he does like Marsh because of the fact when they got him, because he is good defensively when they picked him up. He said he's not as good a hitter, but he's become better hitter now than they got him. He liked pickup of Sosa because of his defense. thought they needed that. But he's not just locked into the one's position. He was a big fan of Didi before they let him go. Obviously, everybody loves Bryce. You can't.
Well, how can you not? How can you not?
Yeah.
I got to ask you. This is the most important question before you leave. Yeah, we got weird traditions in baseball we don't have in basketball. When the wave comes around, does Billy King and family get up and do the wave?
No.
Oh, thank you. See, I knew we were friends for a reason.
Yeah.
Come on.
In 1980, 1970, maybe, but not now.
It still happens, though. It's amazing. Like, I'm like, who are these people that are still doing the wave? Like, everybody's always, during Halloween, like, why aren't we banning candy corn? For me, the wave, not a thing. Are you picking the Phillies tonight? You got Syndergaard on the mound. Are you worried?
I'm not worried about our pitching. What worries me is just their hitting. I don't, they can hit the ball. We can't let them get out on a lead on us. But I do like the fact that we've got our bullpen. We didn't use a lot of the main guys using game one. So we got some are Sir Anthony. So we got Alvarez. So we've got some bullpen, and this will be if we can get 4 innings out of Syndergaard, I'll be happy. If we get 5, I'll be ecstatic. But to me, it's. What I love about the manager Thompson is he just manages the game. He's not looking at some chart. He gets a feel of how the game's going, the momentum, and he'll bring guys in and put them in situations. And I think all the players know he communicates with them. I may need you earlier or not. So that's what I love. He's managing baseball like you manage a basketball game, or it's not off of a chart. So I have all faith in him that whatever Syndergaard gives us, he's got a plan to take care of it from a manager standpoint. So we'll be okay.
Billy, if I could just follow real quickly on that, because I'm curious, because you bring up an interesting point. You had to, all coaches are hired to be fired. It's unfortunate.
Yes.
This is the way it is. GM's the same way, right? It is what it is. You've had to be in that spot. Joe Girardi is he's a terrific baseball man. He's a terrific manager. He just wasn't the right fit. How do you, can you take me through, were there situations like that where, you sit there and hey, look, maybe this coach is a better coach for other teams, but this guy is the one for my team? Like, how much is Rob Thompson the right fit? And how difficult is that? When you look at Girardi, he's got all the credentials, Billy. Clearly, we know he can manage a baseball team, but you could tell Rob Thompson's a better fit for this team.
Yeah, and it's happened to me where you get a coach and everything they do, preparation, it works, but then you see that there's not a connection with the players, and that's the biggest thing. I think in hiring a coach, it's not as much about X's and O's. I think you got to find somebody that's a good leader. If you look at all the best coaches, Nick Saban, Coach K, and I love Coach K, but when I got there, he wasn't a great X and O guy. He was a great leader. And he put us in position, had us prepared to win the games. Bill Parcells, Jimmy Johnson, Joe Torre. They're great leaders, and being part of a great leader is being able to communicate. There are a lot of guys that are great X's and O's, no matter what sport it is, but they can't communicate to the players. And especially at the pro level, in order to win, you've got to convince, whether it's in basketball or football, how many guys you have on the roster that they got to go out and play together as a unit. And that's the biggest challenge that guys have. And I think a lot of them are afraid to communicate with the guys and be honest with them. If you be honest and direct with them, they'll respect you for that, rather than taking a guy out and not playing them and then saying to the media, well, it was just a coach's decision. And if you're not telling the player why, then they start losing trust. So it comes down to leadership. And I think I was on the phone with Joe Girardi about a month before he got fired, talking to him, and great guy, great baseball mind. I think he can manage. It just wasn't the right fit. And now that I'm in executive search that I'm doing, that's what I tell a lot of the clients is like, not every candidate is for every job. You've got to figure out the city. Speaking of Philadelphia, you got to figure out the ownership group and the type of players on that team to find the right person that fits with them, because you can't just put somebody in and say, well, they're a great coach, it's going to work. Well, no. Like Phil Jackson was smart enough. He knew which teams to go to, which not to go to make it work. And everybody said, well, he just picked teams that had great players. No, he picked teams that had players that were driven, like Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, that he could use and then mold the guys around them. So I think you got to find the personality. He's got to be able to fit and be able to lead a certain group. Some guys may need the Bobby Knight style. Some guys may need a more of a Brad Stevens hugging type style. And that's what it comes down to. It's finding that personality. And I think Topper here it was the right fit. And one, he had been here, so he knew the guys. And I think sometimes as an assistant, they spend so much more time talking to guys behind the scenes, getting them to play. And when they become the head coach, some guys change. I don't think he changed his personality. And so guys were able to, I was listening to, there was somebody who was talking, CC Sabathia on the pregame of MLB. And he said, the great thing about Topper is when they're doing batting practice, players were coming over talking to manager and laughing and joking. He goes, look, I've been on a lot of baseball teams. A lot of players don't talk to the manager in free time. He goes, but these guys were just coming over and talking to him. You can tell
him. They trust him.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why it's easy to go out and play when you can make a mistake and the guy's not going to yank you or get on you. Then you want to, and as Coach Cater said, you go into the next play because the coach is going to allow you to go into the next play. If you know you got a short leash, it's hard to play any sport when you have a short leash.
Yeah, I said this the other day, but Leo Mazzoni, of course, Mr. Rock back and forth pitching coach of the Braves all those years, said to me about 20 years ago on the air, he said, coaching at the big league level is knowing where to blow smoke and where to light fire. And it's a great lesson in any leadership, parenting, and all of that, because not everyone's the same. Like I know with my 3 kids, right? You got to be kind of easier going with one. Others need a little bit of a motivation. But players are that way too, Billy, right? Yeah. And the thing to me about Rob Thompson that stands out is that you could tell he's learning about them and understands them and knows them. And he's got an idea of whose arm he can kind of go around, right? And where he's got to do that. To your point, it's, somebody said to me years ago who played for the Joe Torre Yankees, he said, I never thought, and this is somebody who was on all those teams, he said, I never thought Joe Torre was the best manager in the game, but he was the best manager of people. Yeah. And that's most of the job.
Yeah, that is.
That's humans. That's the egos, yeah. Billy. Yeah. They kind of got egos in this sport.
You think? Because like I said before, like Modern Exec Solutions, that's what I joined. I think you're still in Atlanta, aren't you? Are you still based in Atlanta?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And that's where our headquarters is, Modern Exec Solutions. And that's why I went into search, because Coach K said something when he talked to us. He says, look, I'm going to treat you all fairly, but I'm not going to treat you all equally. And that's the biggest thing, is that he says, I'm not going to treat someone that has made so many mistakes over and over, had to the same as the person's done anything right. He goes, to me, that's not fair. And the other thing he always said, people that have a lot of rules are people that don't want to make decisions.
I love that. He said, he knew who to ride to. He rode some of his guys, but you mentioned Bill Parcells was the same way. Look, I grew up a Giant fan. I used to think Phil Simms would need therapy at halftime just to get back out there because of what Bill was doing to him. But to your point, Coach K, it seemed like, you tell me, because, I've heard, JJ tell many stories of a lot of players and Grant and people over the years, like, he knew which guys he could ride.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, he rode me like, he could yell at me and he knew I would just take it and be ready to go the next day. And there was other teammates that he yelled, it was going to take a week to get them back in the fold. And so he would maybe yell at me rather than yell at them. And I understood what he was trying to do. Then it was my job to figure out how to get this person to play better. But that to me, that's what coaching is all about. It's not figuring out how you're going to score in a play or what offense you run. It's how can I get these personalities all to come together and mold themselves and play as one unit, because they all have egos, but you got to figure out how you can play as one unit. You spoke of Parcells. He was at West Point when Coach K was at West Point also. So they were close friends.
And Bobby Knight, obviously, right? So, I mean, you got guys who, look, if you can't handle, there are a lot of people who believe, and I heard Brooks was this way, thinking about like 1980, right, with the Olympic team, greatest coaching job arguably in the history of sports. And, there was always that thing, which I thought Kurt Russell did a great job with, what a movie that is, with Miracle playing. But, like, if you can't handle me in here, how are you going to handle the Russian team out there? Right. Yeah. And it's like, if I'm the worst problem that you have, and Bill Parcells coached that way, like, if you can handle me, the other team's going to be no problem comparatively. But for Rob Thompson,
go ahead. practice was the easiest thing playing at Duke.
That's right.
The game was the easiest thing. Practice was like, so I look forward to games. It was the practices that was, that was the worst part.
I appreciate you, man, so much for doing this. Best of luck with everything you're doing. Have fun at the game tonight, most importantly, and good luck to your Phils, Bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, Case.
There he is. One of the great people in sports. Appreciate him, and one of its smartest, too. Billy King, kind enough to join me here on the show. Jim Duquette going to be here in about 10 minutes. Speaking of GMs who know a thing or two about sports, what a great conversation. First of all, I got a chance to work with Billy at Turner. He was with us I did a couple of years of a bunch of shows with him over at NBA TV, and he's just such a smart, cerebral guy. And I think when you come from the coaching legacy of Coach K and you see the way that he leads, I mean, clearly you get such an advantageous, perspective in life because there's just that guy's off the charts in terms of separating himself. But there's different kinds of leadership. I mean, just to give you a couple examples of through my career, things that as he's bringing it up, I'm thinking about. I've mentioned this on this show before. I don't remember why it came up, but maybe when the Guardians were playing, we were talking about Tito, but got a chance in 2004, the first job I had in this sport, to cover Terry Francona and the Red Sox and be there every day down the stretch and watch the way this guy does his job. And there's a personal nature in which he handles everything with the players and the communication with the players that it did not surprise me to see him go over to, at the time, the Cleveland Indians and have the success that he did. But one thing that I heard specifically, and here's a good example of being good people, and where, hey, look, you could be a great baseball or hockey or football, coach, but are you a great manager? You could be a coordinator. Are you a great manager? But Manny Acta, who's a terrific third base coach, great coach in this game, and terrific dude, and has been a long time. He was the manager of the Indians before Tito came in. And I remember being at that spring training complex. The first 2 days I was down there, and I mean, Tino had only been there, I think it was like a week into spring training. He hadn't been there long. And every player was saying, behind the scenes, you could tell in like a week the difference because Tito wasn't delegating when he had to give bad news. If he's going to cut a guy or not start a guy, or, hey, look, maybe you're not getting the playing time you think you are, or, hey, you're going to have to earn a job, or whatever it might be. He was in his office or on the field with his arm around the player having the conversation. He wasn't sending Sandy Alomar Jr. or somebody else in the staff to do it. And little things like that, players will tell you, are just huge difference makers because, like you can imagine, it's no different than an office. If you got to get bad news, you don't want to hear it from, somebody who's your immediate superior. If it's coming down from above, you'd love that person to say, hey, here's what's going on. Here's what you need to do better. And here's how you can get back to whatever the case, may be, wherever you're getting demoted from or whatever they're doing to you. And players, they really respond, even if it's bad news. And I think most humans are this way if you're getting it direct. I mean, that's what leadership is about. It's about having to tell people things that are not great, but you have to do it. And you have to be able to explain, hey, here's how you can make sure this doesn't happen again. Here's how you're going to get better. Joe Girardi's got all the things you could ever want for being a great manager in this sport. He's been a great manager in this game for a long time. Great baseball guy. He's got all the X's and O's, but he also has people skills, but he's a different natured human just by the way he is than Rob Thompson seems to be. A little bit more of a softer guy, a little bit more of a guy who's going to have a personal feel, the way Dusty Baker seems to manage. And look, I know Dusty a long time personally, not a surprise to me because I've seen him and I've seen him work and seen him, behind the scenes and how he treats humans. So it's not a shock, but that it's not rocket science, people. It is about managing people, especially with the egos. Like managing an office or a branch at a bank is difficult. Imagine managing players that are making way more money than you. They think nothing you got to say means anything. They got no respect for anything you got to say because they're making whatever millions and zillions of dollars and they got the sponsorships and the commercials and you don't, and the team's about you. And they'll go up to the GM office in an NBA and say, hey, look, I'm going to go get you fired because I want a different coach anyway. I mean, that stuff's not easy to deal with. You got to be able to earn their respect. Respect is always, it's always earned, not given. But a lot of times with these athletes, it's even more difficult to do. It's something that I've said this before, that Dusty's always been able to kind of jump that scale a bit because he's a guy who hit behind Hank Aaron, who's done everything you can imagine as a player in the game. So because of that, these players know that. They know the pedigree, and it's going to cut that down, that amount of things that he's got to do. But for Rob Thompson, what a terrific job that he's done with this Phillies team. A team that'll send Noah Syndergaard to the hill in game number 3. It'll be Lance McCullers on the other side, coming up just after 8 o'clock Eastern time tonight on Halloween in Philadelphia. If there ever was going to be an atmosphere that's going to be bananas, you put those two things together and you're going to get dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria, as they said in Ghostbusters. And that's why the beginning of this game will be interesting to watch tonight. We talked about going back as we dig into here game 3. Talked about game 2 with Framber Valdez. Biggest difference between him last year, 2 short starts, out each time before the end of the 3rd inning. And the guy we're seeing now is what? It's the curveball. No, it's kind of the same. The stuff, kind of the same. In here, the emotions are much more under control. He's way more under control with all of the environmental things that are going on around him and being able to have it improve and embrace it to improve his performance, not affect it, not go middle because he's overthrowing a fastball, not put himself where the touch in the field of breaking ball is not where it needs to be, and he's walking guys, all that sorts of stuff, right? Not getting too hot, not getting too cold, the way you need to be if you're going to be a successful pitcher in this game. Well, Noah Syndergaard's a guy who's ridden on emotion in the past, and he's used it to his advantage. You go back to a guy who was telling Alcides Escobar, why don't you come 60 feet 6 inches, and throwing up and high over his head, it just started a World Series game. So we know that he's been that guy, but he doesn't have that kind of stuff anymore. And because of that, the ego is not the same. So what kind of emotions is Noah Syndergaard going to be feeling before this game? How's he going to handle them? He cannot right now ride a fastball the way he used to. He's a sinker ball pitcher. So if Noah Syndergaard starts trying to rev it up and you see him 2-3 ticks above, people always get this wrong. When you watch a guy who usually throws 93, 94 miles an hour and you see 96, 97 at the beginning of a playoff game, a lot of times fans will make the mistake and go, oh, yeah, he's ready tonight. Oh, he's rocking. He's into it. Yeah, that's all true. But usually what happens is the next pitch that you just saw after the radar gun is gone the other way, about 120 exit velocity, because they don't throw that hard. And when they do, now all of a sudden they're finding middle with that fastball, and they're losing that grip and that control. For Noah Syndergaard right now, ironically, he's a control pitcher. He's a sinker ball pitcher. He's got to use breaking stuff. He's going to have to use, and rely on JT Realmuto to work counts and find his way through hitters. How deep can he go into a game? I have no idea. But he can't, with this fastball the way it is now, get the ball up. He's got to have those Astro hitters getting in the ground. Because for all the slug we've talked about with the Philadelphia Phillies and everything we make out of Citizens Bank Park, don't think the Astros with Altuve and Bregman and Alvarez and Tucker and Pena and McCormick and pretty much everybody can go rope it out of the yard out at CBP, because they can get it going, especially if that ball's flying out there tonight with the weather. So Syndergaard's got to be very, very careful to keep that ball down. He is not the pitcher he used to. If you have not seen him pitch in years and you don't follow the Astros and you were a Met fan and you haven't seen what's gone on, this is a totally different dude. He's going to be pitching totally differently, not heaters up in the zone trying to get you to chase or challenging you. Now you're going to find him trying to really change eye levels and put you in a spot where you're swinging and bouncing that ball into the ground. How effective he is early in this game, going to be interesting to see how Rob Thompson manages, because to the point that was made earlier with Mark Feinsand, if you missed it, and he's right, now it's Suarez who can go 20, 25 pitches more because he gets the extra day, maybe get some depth out of him in game 4. They will be able to ride the bullpen a little more here in game 3. But if Syndergaard is out of it early and they're down in the game 4-0, he may go to those B horses until the offense find itself back in an A game. Because he knows that, hey, look, I got to come out of here with 2 out of 3 at minimum and find myself another one, all 5 at Citizens Bank so far. I don't think anybody's got delusions, and who knows, but anything can happen. But I don't think anybody's looking at saying, okay, we're going to win all 3 of these against Houston. Right now, you're put in a spot with Syndergaard going in game 3, where to Mark Feinsand's point earlier in the show, this may be one that right now heavily favors Houston. If the Phillies can get into it in the middle of this game, and even though you don't usually use the steal one at home, but steal one when to start with Syndergaard, right? Turn this thing back around to your horses, which includes Suarez, who's terrific all year long, who will go in game 4. Even though Javier is difficult to hit, you're going to be in a better spot. So we'll see how that develops. Obviously, the lineup-wise, you expect to see pretty much what you're used to. You go back to the game 1 lineups probably on both sides. Jose Altuve going to be one to watch. Had 3 hits in game 2. We saw the 9th inning of game 1, had that pop fly single, wondered whether or not that would turn him around. Obviously, it effectively did. Had 3 hits in game 2. If Altuve gets going, it's a far tougher lineup to deal with. How do they get, the most and maximize what you get out of Yordan Alvarez, who has not been as effective, as much of a factor clearly as he was in the first 3 games in that Mariners series where it looked like he was the best hitter on the planet? Can that guy kind of refine himself? And is this a matchup against Syndergaard that may be able to do that for Alvarez? And then there's kind of the guy who gets forgotten in Kyle Tucker at 2 home runs in game 1. Here's a guy when you're stealing 25 bases, hitting 30 homers, playing good outfield, left-handed hitter, very much like Valdez in the rotation, who gets forgotten because of the Cy Young that Verlander's about to win at age 39. People forget about just how dominant Tucker is of a player now at this point early in his career, because he's nestled in that lineup behind Alvarez and Bregman and Altuve and Pena. Tells you just how deep and offensively potent the Astros are for all the talk we talk about with the Phillies and the slug. We continue here on another episode of October Unfiltered. Jim Duquette to join me here in a couple of minutes. Remember, you can hop on board live throughout the course of our show on the chat 3 ways. 1, pop open on the Twitter box at Casey Stern. 2, my YouTube, which you can get and subscribe to in my Twitter bio. And 3, at Believes, BLEAV, on YouTube as well. And you could get to us and give your comments along the way. We'll pop those on board. Of course, if you are listening on Apple, Spotify, everywhere you get your podcasts, and belated, you can get me at Casey Stern on Twitter and bring your thoughts as well as we continue to preview game number 3, as the streets of Philadelphia will be laden with costumes and crazies and fanatics. And for all of us who will not be watching there, it'll feel much quieter and safer no matter where you're watching this game for game 3, as we get a chance here on the show on October Unfiltered. Welcome in my good friend, Jim Duquette. Duke, appreciate you doing this again today, sir. How are you?
Case, good to see you, man.
So let me start here. As somebody who watched big crowds, and you sit there and you watch from years ago as a GM, New York, and the effect that Shea would have back in the day, right? And you think about all the different places you and I have been. We've been on the road for many years together and covered. How much impact can a place like Philly, with what they're bringing right now, really have on a game tonight or on the next 3 games in this series? Truly,
I think it. Here's the thing: the offense for the first off, they have a lot. They've scored. Their slug is versus 200. Their 5 runs a game in those 5. Offense is a different look. Like, their pitching part throughout, not in the first 2 games of this series, better than I thought. But it's their feed off of that crowd in the field. So I think that putting a lot of times you and I've seen it, like the home field advantage. There has been an advantage a lot of certain circumstances, and Philly an advantage.
yeah, I always go back to you and I watching Madison Bumgarner, and I know you've seen a lot more baseball than I have, but certainly I think in the postseason, anything I've watched in person, nothing like that, where you and I are sitting there next to each other. Now I know it's Kansas City, no offense to the Kaufman, but doing that on the road, you never know how all this is going to play out, but you don't know at all what you're getting out of Syndergaard. Different pitcher, not going to be the guy, Alcides Escobar come at me 60 feet, 6 inches, going after you with high fastballs and challenging you. He's going to try and use a pitch mix. He's going to try and get that sinker and basically get you to belt it into the ground and get you through 3-4 innings. How much confidence, if any, do you have that you get that at a Syndergaard? Just how dicey is this of a proposition to put him against that Astros lineup in this kind of this environment and a small park like Philadelphia tonight, Duke?
Not to be, the great, what Rob Thompson said. He was based because he has postseason experience. You and I were there. We saw it. God, right, the high end velocity. The store, come at me, bring it. He's not that pitcher anymore, right? So any question for me is guys, they don't generally do well against the lineup for them. So they were just okay in the last. But now that Altuve started to see some signs with Alvarez, that it's been good. We know what Pena has been pretty consistent all the way. And Tucker, this offense is ready to just bust out in this next two. Now Suarez, his been you can't expect him to go deep game. So I feel like the offensive type of game certainly today, and I think in the rest of this series, control that offense is going to be.
Yeah, Rob Thompson going to go after it if he got a chance to win. And I love that. I love the urgency that he's bringing because we have seen so many times. I brought up a couple of days ago another situation where he sat next to you watching this, but where Dave Roberts, Doc, and he adjusted after this, but his first World Series appearance, watched Yu Darvish go down 5-0 before he put Kershaw in a game in Game 7 and was 4 brilliant innings. It's too late by then. You got to be able to make that hook and do the right time. Rob Thompson's been so aggressive, been so all over that. But how difficult is that when you've got to be so perfect, Duke? Like they need to be with all. He needs Alvarado to be great every time. He needs Eflin to be great every time. He needs Dominguez to be great every time. And he needs Robertson to be great every single time, right? The Astros have more margin for error with their bullpen, even though it's dominant, than the Phillies do. As aggressive as Rob Thompson is, how much is it? I don't know. Does that bite him somewhere here where just one of those guys doesn't have it? They almost got to be perfect, Duke, for this series for the Phillies to win it.
Yeah, if they have a lead tonight, guys are getting in, and some when finishing the game, that was I think or Dominguez. Robertson came in. I think there's an earlier spot in the game factors in maybe towards the. They're going to need one more guy. I don't think past 3, and so that's where likely or Bellotti, one of those two guys, Wilson's being used or Kyle. It's not. It's gotten sideways. Phillies, and that makes it those, and that's what makes difficult too. If it's and along those lines of this pathway that their offense carries them. So we saw in Game 4 of the NL Suns, and they had the homers. To see it in the World Series, difficult against that Astros pitch.
I got 2 more for you. One, I've been in, look, I asked Feinsand this earlier in the show. He said he wasn't sure. Mike Stanton didn't remember. I'm trying to ask. I'm covering the game 20 years, but I watched it a long time. I never knew the rule of the grandfathered bat thing even existed. I didn't know that you could do that. It sounds dumb to me. Why can Albert Pujols use the bat, but Maldonado can't? I know it got a lot made of it that shouldn't have been because of the Astros of 2017. I get that. But how is there a rule that allows one guy to use a bat, Duke, and another not to? Doesn't this seem like something we should get rid of?
Yeah. So that to me, and I get vacations, like, okay, I do it. You can't use that bat. You make it clear to, if we're going to grandfather saying it's your bat, buddy, and maybe there's a every single year. If you're going to do a grandfather, it's a little way different too. If you remember, obviously they went before they retired. It's Mo Rivera, where who else at that time got? He was the last one. Mo Vaughn was one, but
Butch Husky.
But so they do
Butch
make
Husky.
I'm gonna say Butch, but I'm like, forget Butch, Mr. Freckles. But I would say that, those type of rules when it's really difficult those things to go on. And Albert, guy in this situation, and did it really today?
No,
I mean,
of course not. I mean, come on. But it's the Astros, so therefore nobody gonna you're gonna have people dressed as garbage cans tonight for this game. I expect, among who knows what else is going to happen. Last one for me, because I'm just curious, and I've been banging this drum now for 2 days. It's such a minor thing, but I don't understand why Vierling and Payne and Sosa are in the game. For me. Now, I get this is what you always did. I watched Bryson Stott have a 10-pitch at-bat against Verlander when the inning they cut it 5-3, and I know he made out, but he continued to work Verlander, who then was tired, and the next inning came in and gave up the rest of the lead. He's cold off the bench. He gets a 10-pitch at-bat in the last game, in game 2. Hoskins should have had Sosa's throw. I don't care that it was not high. I mean, come on. That May 8th, you got to make that play. I don't care about it in the postseason. You better make that play. But are you surprised that Stott's not at this point in the lineup every day with the kind of at-bats he's having? Because if it's me, when Valdez comes back around in this series, Stott's starting that game for me, and I probably would start Marsh too.
Yeah, I think I would too. I understand, sometimes you go through, all right, we're gonna give, I'll tell you what, I know you the for Valdez is real. Like, he's in his ERA as in pitch well in the World Series, but this year he's gone to a mental skills in some of these tough things. So the story of trying to go other guys into the line, but it doesn't make sense to me. It should point those guys are, and Sosa going for Alec Bohm late at the third base, and on both defensively. But I asked Rob Thompson about it. He goes, with Bohm, it's going to come around in the lineup again. But Sosa we'll go to him late. Be seeing Sosa, and really, it might be really for me. I'd say maybe with Schwarber, like a big lead or something. And let Marsh better center fielder anyway. Should be by the platoons at this point.
Yeah, I'm with you, Duke. I'm with you. Enjoy game 3. I don't know what the hell. Look, it's fitting for Halloween. I have no idea what's going to happen because Syndergaard's in the game, and between that in itself is going to be go get your Halloween candy. Enjoy it. I appreciate you, buddy. Thank you.
All right, man. You got it, man. See ya.
There he is, Jim Duquette joining us. We appreciate Duke for being on board. Thanks to Mark Feinsand, Billy King along the way. You could jump on board the Unfiltered Revolution at Casey Stern. If you're listening, Apple, Spotify, everywhere you get your podcast, you can get all now 116 episodes, all the conversations, the interviews with managers and coaches and folks from 3 different sports, and MLB and NBA, and even the National Hockey League, where we'll continue coverage in the other 2 sports after about the next week or so. But until then, we'll see you live at noon Eastern, including tomorrow, which is Tuesday, where Joe Cirallo from the Believe Network and my guy, former teammate, and a thing or two, knows a thing or two, I would say, about getting big knocks and homers at over 500 in his career, Gary Sheffield. Shep going to hop on board tomorrow live as well. Hopefully you'll be here for that and with us along the way. Thanks to the guests. Thanks to you for your support. And, of course, those who make this possible, as we, as always, at Unfiltered and October Unfiltered are presented by our good friends at BetOnline.